Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to today's webinar, We Mapped This City. This is a really exciting webinar. I can't wait to get started, but I'm going to do a couple of housekeeping notes first before we get started. My name is Tess Wilson. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Middle Atlantic region of the Network of the National Library of Medicine. There is closed captioning available for today's webinar. Tessa just put the link in the chat, so you can click that if you'd like to have closed captioning. This session is being recorded, and it'll be available on our YouTube channel in a few weeks. I'll send out a follow-up email to everyone with that link as well. If you want to chat during this webinar, chat your questions to all participants. You'll see a drop-down menu in that Send To option so that everyone can see your comments. If you have a tech question, you can direct those to all panelists. But generally, just use the all participants so we can all see what you're saying. Participants in this workshop are eligible for Medical Library Association credits or CHES credits, Certified Health Education Specialist credits, if applicable. Anyone interested in claiming CHES credits will just need to complete the course evaluation and include your name and credentials when you're prompted. And finally, please complete the evaluation at the end of this webinar to receive a code for continuing education credits so that we can continue to improve our future trainings. You'll be automatically redirected to that survey after you close out of this window, but if for some reason you aren't, we're going to put that link in the chat throughout the webinar as well. This webinar is a collaboration between the South Central region and the Middle Atlantic region, and so we are really excited today to bring you Diana Liu. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Diana, and you can get started.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tess. Is everyone able to see what is on the screen right now?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming in digitally today. It's nice to see your names on the chat, and I hope that you will pepper me with questions and comments throughout the presentation. I am not going to share too much about myself, except that I love maps. I've always loved maps when I was a kid, sort of looking at them like artwork, and then really began to use them as a planner. So I will start off by sort of mapping myself. So a little bit about my background is that I grew up in Monterey Park, California, which is a part of Los Angeles, and I live and work in Philadelphia today. I have my training as a city planner, and so a bit of what I'll be talking about today is really how I have used mapping as a community engagement tool as a planner, and then I now work in journalism and I've been able to use a lot of those similar tactics, again, as a community engagement tool, and really ultimately as some of the building blocks for the formation of the organization that I currently work for, the Germantown Infohub. So the role of maps is something that has alternated a bit in terms of, who makes the maps, just like in journalism, who tells the stories and whose voices are heard. And so I'm really hoping today to emphasize that this is a tool that can be used by experts and non-experts alike as just another communication tool, in this case, something that is really visual and can really help, especially if you're working in communities that you're trying to build trust for the first time, if you're working with multiple generations, and also if you're working with communities that have multiple languages. And so this is a way to bypass many of those barriers. And also to pull in memory, senses, places of importance, places of fear, I think really plays a role too, and we'll talk about that too. So just very, very simply, maps are the visual language to share how we see the world. And from the beginning, when I was in undergrad as an urban studies major, an early cartography class I took was on how to use geographic information systems as a tool for planners. But it was important that we started with the history. And so from the beginning, it was understood that maps were used as a way for colonizers and the race for discovery as a way to place names and ownership on places. And so at first, maps were not always accurate, but they were a way to make the argument for ownership and also to really grandize the breadth and the reach of certain empires. That's no longer the case, but it is important to know that this is one of the earlier ways, along with wayfinding, that it was used as a political tool. Today, as an application and for city planners, it is absolutely critical in terms of being able to show how change happens, where there are densities for things, how you can show how, looking at this map from the Pew Charitable Trust of a breakdown of home ownership in Philadelphia, you can just see over time, just using a color gradient, how change happens. And, for everyone else who uses maps, when I was growing up, we relied on the Thomas Guide as well. It was just a place for any passerby to go somewhere that they were not familiar with, or even a place that they were familiar with. Maybe they just needed some driving directions. It's a place that, there's a constant with maps, so we think. And especially when it comes to things like highways and routes and where water is, then that's the way that maps were used also. So I'm going to talk a little bit about then, for those who have made maps and then those who purchase maps or navigate with them. That's one thing, but a lot of the focus for today will really be around how we can make sure that it is embraced and seen and used as a tool for community members to be able to visualize and communicate with institutions that they're working with funders, with organizations, with journalists. Really, anyone who is not of the community should be able to, if they use some of these tools, to really get to see how residents and community members view their community through a mental mapping or asset mapping process. They can really see what would not really be available on Google Maps or on the Thomas Guide, but is how people navigate the spaces that they are a part of. And so to begin, I'm going to go a little bit into planning basics. And so the main elements of how I use mapping, I will focus on some of the foundations of planning and then over to some communications information theory that journalists use. So, but to begin, I really want to highlight a seminal work that all planners will likely have either read at some point, have in their office, or are guided by this work, and that is The Image of the City by Kevin Lynch. And what Kevin Lynch did was really highlight, if you work within a community, there are ways in which people move around and how they navigate a city, and that's different in every city. And the way that you can get to know a city is by understanding how residents and users build their mental map. And he breaks it down into 5 elements that I'll go over. They are landmarks, districts, nodes, edges, and paths. And according to Kevin Lynch, if you have all these elements, this is a functional city. And again, this is very much focused on the built environment. Planning in the 60s was very top-down. There was a lot that was going on with eminent domain, and so a lot of the choices that planners make, I want to make, include this caveat that planners and journalists for a long time had a very top-down, not community, bottom-up approach. And this is an attempt at an understanding of how to look at things from the pedestrian standpoint. So first was the landmark. So if you go to any city, you can probably think about, so for example, in Philadelphia, people would consider City Hall a landmark because it is something that is very visible. It stands out. It is really, really tall. It's something that people can use as a meeting point. And oftentimes landmarks also have some sort of historical affiliation. So it's a place of importance. So it has some sort of cultural reference. At the same time, though, landmarks could also be an extremely tall hill or the mountains. Anything that, again, someone can point out whether you live somewhere or you don't. It's an easily identifiable physical object that serves as a public reference. And it's something that's very unique. But in memory, landmarks can also be places that used to be that people still use as a turning point. For instance, if somebody says, oh, you know, so-and-so's house is right past where the old Sunoco station used to be. People who lived in that neighborhood a certain amount of time would know exactly where that place was. And it is a place that is still a reference point, even though it doesn't exist anymore. And that's where we tie into the memory components. The next element of the city that Ken and Lynch highlighted is the node. And this is just, these are meeting points. And this is where streets intersect with each other. This might be a plaza that people can get into. And the difference between a node and a landmark is that you can enter a node. And so a train station would be an example of a node. So when we ask people, meet me somewhere, and you want to think about what's accessible, you try to think about what are the intersections of popular transportation points. And again, using Philadelphia as an example and going back to City Hall, logically, because the center of the city was built around City Hall, a lot of the regional rails, many of the buses, many of the trolleys that we have, and ground subways, many of those stations intersect there. So it's a place where somebody riding the Amtrak from New York or DC would go into 30th Street Station, which is about 15 blocks away, but can transfer to City Hall. And so these are the types of places when you're entering the city, or if you're working in a community that you're unfamiliar with, and try to think about what are some of those strategic spots or meeting points that people can easily get to. And nodes are one of those ways to figure that out. Next are districts. And this is just when you have a cluster or an area that you can identify because it has some sort of commonality. It's often used in my work as a planner. I tended to work with local businesses and commercial districts. And so these are clusters of businesses that are somehow sharing an identity of some sort. And so in Philadelphia, there is Old City District, which has both the elements of being very historical, a lot of the Revolutionary era cobblestone roads and Betsy Ross's house. All of those things are a part of the Old City District. And so it's a branding perspective, but it's also a place where people know to go for the epicenter of history. There are certain businesses and institutions that are around there. Chinatown, where I worked in Philadelphia, is also a district. And in that way, people sort of have an idea of where Chinatown begins and ends. But unlike a landmark or a node, it's not just one spot or place. It's an entire, it can be a cluster of several blocks. It can go on for much larger, but there is something that has a commonality and something that people can really identify and say, yes, I am in this place. A lot of times universities have a role as being the focal point, universities and hospitals, I should say. So if there is ever some sort of college district or university district, that's also a way for people to know that this is for the imprint or however long that radius is. There are jobs, there are buildings, and there's a connection with the university. So that's another way to think about districts. And then paths. Paths are the things that are, I think, really exciting because you think about paths as how people get around, and this is something where there are traditional paths, paved paths like streets and canals and transit lines that people know about and can see on the map, but they can also be places that are walked through that are sort of made individually or by the community that are cut through. So it might be the safest path or the preferred path once you get to know some of the folks that you're trying to work with that use or navigate a space a certain way. So when you think about the path that the user uses, then you can think about, well, what do I need a place that will most likely either get the attention or is going to be accessible if we're assuming that the highway is the path, but not everybody in the area that you're working in has a car, for instance, then the highway is not necessarily the path, but the but the path between the bus stop and the 2 blocks between that and the community center might be the best path. And then we have the edge, which are boundaries. And this is really important when we think about cities or neighborhoods where if you've ever gone somewhere and somebody has said, oh, that we don't cross over there, that's when we know that that's a no-go zone, or we know that that place is dangerous, or we know that that place is not safe for us. Whatever us means, there is some sort of edge that signifies the end of something and the beginning of something else. And it might be something as simple as there's a shoreline there and we just can't cross because then it's water. Or it could be that there is an emotional barrier and a boundary, and if you enter a community and you look at something that, you know, on Google Maps might say it's only 1 mile away from the train station, it makes perfect sense for it to be there, but you don't realize that there is a lot of gun violence that happens 0.2 miles away, or that there has been a history of protests along some point or another. There might be some edges that, you know, once you start communicating with folks you're trying to work with, then you get a sense of what the edges and the boundaries are. And we'll dive into some examples of that too. But before I do that, I really want to emphasize then the other great figure in planning that couples the work that Kevin Lynch does, and that is The Death and Life of Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs. And Jane Jacobs, she published this book a year after Kevin Lynch did, and her background is absolutely 100% different. She was not an architect, she was not a planner, she was a journalist, a writer, and an activist. And she really came about to protest the work that architects and planners were doing at the time because of the times of eminent domain and how decisions were being made for cities to make sense on the map, for highways, for bridges, for ways to move cars and people around, but at a way that disrupted the natural collision of people, the people that made up the cities. And oftentimes people didn't have power, and so they were the ones who were most likely to be displaced during this time of eminent domain. And so when she, about 50 years after she had published this book, Jane Jacobs is known as one of the great thinkers and one of the most seminal influences on planning as we know it today. And there's a lot that has spun out of that, but for me, I would say that Jane Jacobs really embodies placemaking and community-based planning and putting people first. And having that perspective combined with the professionalism and the practice of what Kevin Lynch was applying is the way that I see cities and how I navigate. So to put some of these into examples, oh, and also to say, you can tell what kind of person Jane Jacobs is because there's so many pictures of her protesting and also carrying petitions. This is a documentary that will also be included in the follow-up resource guide that was that came out 3 years ago that really emphasizes that she is a citizen. People don't call her a planner, but planners follow her work. And to go back to one of the themes of today's presentation, it is that you don't need to be an expert or a practitioner to be able to know how to navigate a city and to articulate to other people, this is how you navigate my city. And Jane Jacobs really, really challenged planners to think about that. So we're going to now dive into case studies. First, we'll talk about Chinatown in Philadelphia, which is an area that I worked in first as a planner, observing just the general area and having the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation as a client. And then I eventually became the Main Street manager for Chinatown. And ultimately, I worked for a couple of organizations in different capacities in the areas surrounding. And so I'm going to talk about how I've worked with Chinatown and used mapping as a tool as a planner, and then later on, how media has activated some of those spaces in different forms and the power and danger of that at times. So here we have, if you Google Chinatown Philadelphia, this is what you see. You see We have the Friendship Gate, which is the symbolic entrance to Chinatown, and you see it's a faint, sort of pinkish outline that you see. Chinatown looks like it's roughly 6 city blocks. Seems kind of small, right? And so then, who uses maps like these? Then you have Eater Philadelphia. Eater is a part of a national network of food publications. And so they've highlighted here are a couple of top restaurants that are in Chinatown. So, and that's fine and good. You can tell that this is an outsider who is making that list, in part because they reference a photo from a New York establishment. But at the same time, they're highlighting things and they're looking within the confines. I did a walking tour through Jane's Walk, which is a celebration of Jane Jacobs' work. And in 2014, this is an international walking phenomenon that happens over a weekend, and there are about 100 cities internationally that participate. So in the first Jane's Walk in 2014, I did a walking tour of Chinatown, and you can see I've highlighted through the work that I did over the years, I identified I did a mental map and then worked with a lot of the stakeholders that were part of that map, and also then some of the key places where people interact. And the Chinatown extends a lot more. I focused on a couple of corridors just in the interest of time. This walk was 2 hours long, but I highlighted things like Joyce and Lau, which was a very old restaurant in Chinatown, and the basement of Joyce and Lau is where some of the key community decisions are made. That would not be on a map with Eater Philadelphia. There are institutions that are community centers and sort of informal spaces. Some of them are tucked in on 2nd or 3rd floors. Other places are just, if you've been there, you know about it. And if you don't go through some of these places, the individuals are gatekeepers. And sometimes the trust comes if you know to talk to certain gatekeepers because they're respected in the community. And if you go just off of a list online of where maybe some of the key institutions are, you might miss some of that. And so but the question then is, why did Google Maps put such a small boundary around Chinatown? And that really goes back to eminent domain. What happened was the Vine Street Expressway, which you see at the very northern edge of Chinatown. Chinatown used to go up about twice as way further north, but because of eminent domain, the Vine Street Expressway was leveled part of Chinatown, and the Chinatown Community Development Corporation was formed out of protest against the highway. The highway was still constructed. However, the church, Holy Redeemer, which you can see right above, Holy Redeemer Chinese Catholic Church, which is one of the most important institutions in Chinatown, is not considered a part of Chinatown, according to Google Maps. And it's confusing even, because so here is a map that the city of Philadelphia has. This was from a 2017 neighborhood plan of Chinatown. You can see that this expands a little bit more. That dotted line is the Vine Street Expressway. But in previous planning studies, Chinatown and the area surrounding it and the cultural expansion of it, the district, goes much further than the limited definition that users, who are not users rather, would see Chinatown. And so when you expand this understanding to know who has a stake in Chinatown, where some of these organizations are, and certainly where some of the residents are, then you get these types of details. So this is something, Interface Studios was the firm that worked on the 2017 neighborhood plan, and they surveyed 239 Chinatown residents, and they asked them to identify their favorite places, their homes, and then places that are important for them. And they identified that as money for improvements. This is where we see value in our community. This map is much more populated, and the area is much, much larger than what we would see on Google Maps. And so this is really paltry by comparison. And so you can see how a planner or anyone who's trying to work in the Chinatown community needs to work off of this map, not this map. And so then it's just, how do we get there? And And I want to mention too, or I want to share that when I did that Jane's Walk, I no longer worked at Chinatown. I had since then moved on to working at the regional level for the Commerce Department in Philadelphia. And so I was working with businesses all over, but my connections with Chinatown, and for a long time still, I just was an individual on the ground who knew a lot of the individuals and institutions. And so when I conducted the Jane's Walk, it was partially a walk, but was really highlighting a collection of speakers who were a lot of those individuals, who would be the same folks who would have been interviewed to piece together a map like this. And the information doesn't die with me. I really want to emphasize that too, because I'm not the expert here. I was somebody who worked in Chinatown for a little bit and was able to get this information because people shared it with me. And I brought that on then into my next role in media, where I'm not trained as a journalist. I never went to a journalism school, but I began working as a community engagement editor for Plan Philly, which is the planning and development news site for WHYY, which is the regional NPR and PBS station in Greater Philadelphia. And so we did a partnership, an event with City Lab, which was previously with the Atlantic and now with Woodward, where we did a walking tour and then a presentation on the rail park, which was a place of great conflict for a long, long time in the Chinatown community, and it's immediately adjacent. So I brought back some of those speakers that were a part of my previous Jane's Walk and included them in this walk so that they could tell a fuller history around what the area around the rail park, which then seeps into Chinatown. And I think so we emphasize, these are some of the buildings, the history behind some of these buildings. This is an entry point, and the people who are speaking are the organizers who either work there or they live there. And this is from the perspective of local media, which then couples really nicely with what City Lab did, since they were, in this case, outsiders coming in. And so you can have the path where you're on the rail park yourself, exactly as it stands out on the map, but you really need to have those voices and the individuals who use it and are developing it to really get a sense of why the space is so important. And City Lab then also brought in a lot of folks who were very much a part of the change, but at a much higher level. So we had the architectural critic for one of the major newspapers. We had the commissioner for the Parks and Rec Department. But if City Lab did the event without Plan Philly, it would be a very incomplete look and understanding of the rail park and how people use that space. And so that's why it was a really great partnership. So I went from working in a role as a community engagement editor to really then diving into the beginning and the formation of a neighborhood-based journalism project. And that follows, and so now I'm going to go a little bit into kind of the nitty-gritty of how journalists can use mapping as a tool. And so communication infrastructure theory is this idea that if we want to have people who feel like news coverage is by them, for them, or somehow really reflects what they're going through, then you need to have a storytelling network. And that is where residents, community groups, so you can say community organizations, institutional leaders, stakeholders, and local media are interconnected, so that it's not a direct connection between the reporter, who is the outsider, and the established leader without the users or the organizers. And that is critical in terms of trust. And so one way that CIT is put into place is with asset mapping. And if we look at journalism as how do people get information and who do they go to get the information that they trust, especially when there's a lot of misinformation out there, if there is fake news, if there is stuff on the internet that has not been vetted in some way, some of that doesn't matter. If you trust the source that you get it from, then that's where people get their information. That's what they'll choose to believe oftentimes. And so if you want to spread information about, a public health measure, or if there are some resources that you want folks to be aware of, we sort of break it down into these are the 3 communication assets that you would go through, and this is how people find information. And So the cultural are those centers. They might be, it might be a park, it might be an establishment within that's an offshoot of a place. It might be a landmark if we use Kevin Lynch's terms, but it's something that really says this piece makes me feel like I am in Chinatown, and this tells part of Chinatown's story. Community organizations are probably some of the easier places to identify. Those would be if there is a community development corporation, if there is a library, if there is a church. These are some of the institutions that usually have physical buildings attached to them, but they could be schools. But these are places where individuals know to go for information, and they often go there for services as well and some resources. And oftentimes these community organizations rely on some federal or local or state funding, and so it's also a great way to really be able to circulate information. And then there are the business communication assets, and these are, back in my mainstream manager days, just, the things that tie people back to place oftentimes. Those who know that there were businesses that have been there for a long time, that's where their uncle or their cousin was employed. That's a place where, back in the day, or even still today, they'll take things on credit because it is a place where you can be safe. It's a place where you can get gossip, where you can get information. It's a place that has stood the test of time that you believe represents your community, and it is a place of business and you're proud to support it. So those are the key places that CIT has identified as where people get information, formally or informally. And so to look at how that works, I'm going to highlight two neighborhoods, Germantown, Philadelphia, and then later on, very quickly, South LA. And we're just going to go through the community asset mapping process. So the Germantown Infohub, the organization that I currently work for, came out of a research project. The Germantown neighborhood in Northwest Philadelphia is a place that has been overlooked largely by media, and I say that to say that it is a large neighborhood that encompasses 2 zip codes, is a little more than 50% Black overall, but East Germantown is about 70% African American, high levels of poverty. Philadelphia also is the largest major city with the highest levels of poverty over several decades, even as the city has been growing. And so Germantown has been a place that when stories of Germantown happen, the mainstream media has tended to, and in addition, I should emphasize that a lot of local papers have folded. And so ways that people used to get information was with the Germantown Courier. And as it happens now today, a lot of these local papers have folded. A lot of metro desks within newspapers, even with the New York Times and Washington Post, are much more focused on national and international news. And so local news that's extremely relevant to residents, where residents trust who is covering it and also trust that the information is for them, is something that is fading away. And so something like the Germantown Infohub, initially our 2 researchers, Andrea Wenzel and Latrell Crittenden, were just trying to understand where people in Germantown and East Germantown in particular were getting information because mainstream, and they had emphasized deep distrust of mainstream media because they have painted Germantown as a place of gun violence, of high crime, and then there are a couple of examples of, once a year for Juneteenth, they'll go over to Germantown to talk about Black history, but nothing in between, nothing about sort of the day-to-day news that's going on, individuals who aren't considered breaking news because they've just been doing it for so long. They've been volunteering at the library for several decades. That's not considered breaking news. And so over time, the formation of Germantown, this was in the earlier stages when the Germantown Infohub was, I think, within our first year. And we had a class, a journalism class that was taught that was open to residents in Germantown as well as journalism students, and they would work in teams to identify, and they built the asset map for Germantown. and they highlighted things that were important for residents, and they also interviewed residents and leaders to ask them what are important spaces for you. So what is a map of Germantown by Germantown look like? And I'm just going to share a couple of screenshots of what the asset map looks like. Also, I'm seeing that there are no questions in the chat, so don't be shy. I realize I've been talking for about 30 minutes, and you're probably drowning in a combination of excitement and curiosity. But let me know, and let the others know that you're thinking about things too. And if I'm talking too fast, let me know. So a couple of things that the Germantown community identified, for instance, was Face-to-Face. This is a community organization that is a food pantry, and they serve the homeless population and folks who are experiencing homelessness. And they're also a place for a lot of information, and because of some of the funding that they get, even if you're not there directly for their services, they often have an awareness of just the tenor of what's going on in the community. Another place that is really important is the Woodward Tennis Club. Again, this is a lot of firsts in African American history happened in Philadelphia, and a lot of that happened in Germantown. And so when there are places of great importance, and also then if there's any sort of trauma that happens in the community, just like there's a lot of celebration in the community, a lot of people congregate around some of these spaces. And so it's important to identify them, because perhaps on a map, or maybe at a cursory glance, it's just a sports facility, but it's much, much, much more than that. The same goes for the Germantown Life Enrichment Center. This is a place where, because educational attainment and the graduation rate in Philadelphia is not great, there are also a lot of places where when there are opportunities for engaging youth and to have intergenerational connections, and when the city is also struggling with funding to maintain public spaces, having these alternative spaces that are similar to rec centers, but in some way have, that are safe and for the community, and are used and maintained are also very, very important. Oh, I see a question from Renee. Do you use GIS technologies for the construction of the maps? Oh, great question. So StoryMap is actually, it's an application, it's a platform, so you plug in information. It was previously placed in an Excel spreadsheet that had the address on it, and then there is the information that is text. It is, and variations of story maps will also show images, and you can also embed videos in it. So it's a place for longer form stories. In terms of how great question, Renee, how do we identify and recruit stakeholders? It's a sort of a multi-layered process. And so you would first, this is actually a great question that I'm going to skip over to another slide to speak to your question, Renee. So I'll breeze over this very, very quickly. The last place that I would just want to really quickly highlight in Germantown is the Philadelphia Hair Company. There are a lot of barbershops that are places where people spend all day going there for information, or to get their hair done, or to find someone. And if you need to get information out stat and you need to post something, then finding businesses like the Philadelphia Hair Company are critical in terms of sending information. So in terms of how you find, and yeah, this is a really great question from Phil. Have we found that community assets change frequently? And I'll say yes and no. Some of the major ones, some of the major institutions don't change. So I'm just going to highlight this one in South LA because it shows the map in its entirety. So this project, South LA Democratic Spaces, only focused on 15 sites. South LA is very, very large. The spot over here is about 16 square miles. So what they used here was that they identified a bunch of, and this is a project through USC's Communications and Media School. through 2 of their community papers, and also in partnership with some of the community organizations that they work with. And so the step that they did, and the same thing for the Germantown Infohub, is that we started out by identifying some of the key nonprofits and community organizations. And so it was the assumption that if they received funding or in some way had a designation, in Philadelphia we have something called registered community organizations, and they're the groups that are able to, if there's a zoning variance that is up for proposal, then the RCO would have the ability to speak. They would have to present to the RCO. So some of it is looking sort of in city documents to find a spreadsheet of which are the community organizations and which are the ones that have some sort of zoning power. And so that is one way to sort of identify them. But from there, like, that's where the map would be static, because you can look up that information, you can follow the money, but it's the asset maps are really built and the mental maps are built by then speaking with users. And so with individuals who work in these community organizations, we would ask them, where are the places that you think are crucial and pivotal to your work? Where would you go if you were trying to reach your constituents? Or where do you go when, if not in your space, are there certain venues that you go to do presentations? When you need to promote an event, are there certain businesses that you flyer in? Are there certain organizations or individuals that you ask to post through their newsletter or through their Facebook group? You know, who are those individuals? Who are those connectors? And so in terms of community assets, oftentimes if there's something that has a great deal of history tied to it, then they would, to speak to Phil's question, then it would, I think I should put it later in the slide, then it would be, oops, oh, it wasn't included. It would be something, especially if it's a historic building, and again, going back to memory, if it was the place where the old Sunoco station used to be, oh, that's where Germantown High School used to be. It may, some of those places, depending on what you're looking to do, those that are steeped in memory might be harder to find, but places like major parks, major churches, health centers, and certain restaurants, those would probably physically still be there. And then as long as some of the key community organizations that you're trying to work with are still there, it would be very good to ask them too if there used to be organizations similar to theirs which have folded, because sometimes some of the constituents or the individuals that they serve are still looking for something, and they may have scattered in a different way and they may have found a resource somewhere else. And so kind of retracing some of those steps are helpful too to fill in the blanks in that map. So pause to read this question from Hannah on similar stories, but wondering if you can speak to how this is user-friendly. Absolutely, yes. So, Hannah, did you look at my presentation in advance? This is, so the great thing about the South LA Democratic Spaces one is that this was done through portraits and video narrations. And so, and again, it was focused on 15 folks who worked for community organizations in South LA, and they were asked to define what a democratic space is. And it was an open-ended interpretation, and that meant that people could just sort of talk about feeling. And the goal of this project was to really identify places that encourage social change. And so the focus then is on, where do people gather? Where are spaces that are useful and that are powerful? And people had different ways of interpreting that. And so, and the list of all 15 sites along with the videos and interviews are included in the resource guide too, but I'll just highlight a couple of them. So one interview, he said that the words that would describe for her a democratic space are healing, power, and history. So if there's a place where people go because they need to feel safe, or because there was some sort of trauma that happened, and they know that this is a place where they can be around folks who are part of their community or in some way can help them process something that is difficult, especially in places of emergency or in disaster. Like where do you go if school lets out early and you're not sure where your kids are? Is there a place that they know to go that is, you know, either an aunt's place, or it might be a play center that has extended hours? You know, that would be a democratic space. It could be a playground that has, you know, oftentimes you'll know a lot of parents will just be there. And it's a place, it could be a gathering place, it could be a place that has deep, significant history. Someone else had highlighted a democratic space that was just a festival. So it wasn't even a long-term space, but it was still a place of importance because it was an annual festival. And that person had said that a democratic space needs to be accessible monetarily, physically, and culturally. And that it's a space that members of the community feel that they have control over. And there was a description sometimes of, you know, that there might be a very nice school nearby, or there might be a really nice institution that is very carefully maintained, and a lot of money has gone into making sure that the exterior is historically accurate, but the community that lives around them don't get access to or have control over that space. So that's not a democratic space, and that's not a community asset. And one of the spaces, this one really spoke to me, also because I worked with small businesses. So Rudy Espinoza works with a small micro lending project that supports small businesses and street vendors for growth. And so for him, democratic spaces really have to be places that, and again, this point of ownership comes up again and again, but it is a place that, so he highlights this we chose a taco truck, and they ignite a space at nighttime. And mind you, this is in 2012, so at the time, taco trucks pop-up spaces were still very exciting at the time. I mean, they're still exciting, but this back then was really considered revolutionary in the way that they turned this parking lot into an open air restaurant. But the things that Rudy really emphasizes in this video is that the people who go there late night are going there because they're cultivating the natural and indigenous networks that for folks who work in the same industry, and also the communities around that area. And it's an informal space, but for him, this is where a lot of connections are made. That's where ideas get tested. That's where people feel comfortable being with each other. And he was really emphasizing that we need to look at what already exists in Los Angeles and to cultivate more of the thinking that is there, more of the repurposing that is there, and that the entrepreneurs who are repurposing these spaces, they're the ones who would be, this is an example of a type of business where this is a communications asset. And if you want to circulate information, and if you want to see what is relevant to the community you're trying to serve, these are the types of spaces that you would go to. And but the great thing about this South LA Democratic Spaces project is that it used a map in that it ultimately showed everything in a map, but the formats were in interviews, photographs, and videos. And they're just uploaded on YouTube. It's not expensive in the way that StoryMap requires a membership. And it is, and especially in terms of times of COVID, it would be, and that's something that the Germantown Infohub is looking into also, is having recorded narratives from community members where they can use their phone as a recording device, and that way they can just stand outside of a space that is important to them and speak to it without the in-person camera crew that we might use in a different situation. And in that way too, it just takes, once things are submitted, then it just takes whoever is the keeper of all of this information to place it all together in a way that's visual, and that could look like something like this, or it could look like a story map. Something else that the Germantown Infohub is doing, we are actually going to switch over from, in our next iteration of our asset map, we're going over to a more user-friendly, just Google Maps, so that we're plotting down all of that same information, and that way people can also come to us with suggestions. And also, just to speak to Hannah and Phil's question, also in the map previously of Philadelphia's Chinatown that was a part of the 2017 neighborhood plan, this was done using paper survey forms. And so there were these little postcards where people just put information down. And let's see where it does. Audience friendly. Do you interview community residents about the ways they use the tool? So just want to make sure that I fully answer the question, Hannah. When we interview community residents, we didn't train the community residents in story maps. We just we interviewed them and got the information that they provided us, and then the longer story, we wrote articles for the InfoHub's website, and then we placed snapshots of it in story maps. And I think that actually gets me to the very end of my presentation. Yes, it does. Cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana. I think another question popped up in the chat. Looking at StoryMap's website, it requires a lot of legal permissions. Can Google Maps provide a similar format with easy community access without the required legal permissions?
And the answer is yes, absolutely. And the better thing about Google Maps, which is why we're also moving over, is that we can count on when we embed Google Maps into our website that it will be updated more frequently, as opposed to story maps, which we're not sure how often. While it's really, it's gorgeous for if once you go through it, just like the experience of it. But its upkeep is very expensive, and oftentimes we get funding to start a project, but we don't get funding for maintenance. So using something like Google Maps is really helpful. There's a Policy Map is another tool that is good for searching information that doesn't require a subscription the way that Esri does. Oh, hello, Philly native.
Diana, that was great. Thank you so much. We have about 7 minutes left until noon. If anyone has questions, I can unmute you, or you can just pop it in the chat. And I will also put a link to the survey in the chat as well, and I will put the resources link in the chat again too. Thanks so much for that. There's a great resources document that Diana put together for us. It's full of really cool links, so I'll be sure to put both of those links in the chat. Like I said, you should be automatically rerouted to the survey, but just in case, there's that link. And it'll give you a survey that will then give you a link to claim your CHES or MLA credits.
I'm just curious, it's not necessarily a question, but if people could type in either what you do or why you were interested in this, I'm always fascinated to hear about it. Oh, wow. Thanks, Marina.
Oh, I'm so glad you could come, Marina. Thanks for coming. This is great.
Yeah, I think if you entered Philadelphia's Chinatown with the map that Google Maps show, it's such an insult. And so when instead you say, you tell us, like, what's your map of Chinatown, you get a very different impression. Oh, food access. I love it.
It looks like Julie asked, what health-related assets or spaces did people highlight, if any?
I'm going to very quickly try to pop open the latest, let's see. Oh, the resource guide that we've been working on. So we wrote an accompanying resource guide for our asset map because of COVID. And so there were a lot of things that were, we made it online because of how rapidly things were changing. But for health-related things, we had identified mental health services, family care, places for meals and care and nutrition support for senior citizens. And there were, and I'd say included in family planning were also a couple of things that were, actually I would say as an expansion in the umbrella when we were thinking about terms and topics, I just made up a word, is sort of like the umbrella topic was just sort of fitting in where also victim services and places for victims of abuse. And so we identified all of those as community resources and that were related to health. Oh, so interesting seeing all this information from who's in the room. And for the librarians too, a great thing that's also low tech is if you want to then just print out the map as it currently stands or as you see it on, and again, this is, very aware that it might take some time to get to this point, having a physical map, but then even just having people put thumbtacks with a little note saying this is why this spot is important to me, and just sort of seeing how that builds out over time. And leaving something that doesn't have an end date necessarily or isn't an event so that you only have, a 2-hour window of time to contribute to the map, to then just pass by and say, hey, I've been thinking about this and I'm writing this in. Same thing with those survey cards that were used in the 2017 Chinatown Neighborhood Plan. It was, a lot of it is, and this is, pivotal for me when I work in community engagement, that you need to do things on the time and the comfort and the convenience and accessibility of the community that you're trying to work with. And so 9 to 5, not everybody works 9 to 5 jobs, and if people need to access childcare or something like that, just having certain events at certain times makes it inaccessible. But so having something that people can walk by and contribute information at their convenience is really helpful. So we've also, when we circulate information, we tend to go to some of the major grocery stores, the libraries, some of the rec centers, and when we started using, I know there are some people like them and some people don't, but also using a QR code to just guide people if they see something and it's a curiosity and they say, want to learn more about this? Here's this QR code. But ways of, and then also I would say going to, when you're at community meetings, then just taking a time, could be the last 15 minutes of something to just ask people to make community announcements or to say, where should we host this meeting next, or who should we invite, who did we miss, and have people plop in suggestions and then follow up with them to get the information in terms of what the address is and why it's a place of significance. And things like that too, in terms of initial engagement. So like if you partnered with a community organization to host an event and then you ask participants to share what's important to them, that's that next stage of connection, and then following up with them so that there's the trust building and the one-on-one, and then for them to see that their contribution was then placed somewhere where they could see it visibly, on a map, on a website, printed in a resource guide. It really shows it does a lot in terms of community buy-in. And a lot of the individuals and organizations that were initially highlighted in the Germantown Community Assets Map were folks that we then asked to join our community advisory board. And and that's how we're able to sort of keep our reporting in check to make sure that the topics that we cover and the sources that we interview continue to be relevant. Let's see that again.
It looks like we are right at noon. Thank you so much, Diana. This was great. Again, this was a joint effort from the South Central region and the Middle Atlantic region, and we're both just so excited to have had everyone here today. A reminder, this has been recorded. I will send out a follow-up email with that link. And I'll put another link to the survey and the resources list in the chat. If anyone is interested, there are so many really awesome people in this audience today. If anyone's interested in talking about ways that NNLM could support the work you're doing, or if you just want to chat about NNLM resources, just shoot me an email at tesswilson@pitt.edu. I put my email in the chat there. I'll put the survey link and the resources link in there again for everyone. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Diana.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you for asking so many questions, everyone.
Yeah, this was great.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.